Welcome to Secrets from the Scene, a show for local musicians who want to improve their music, grow their audience, and learn about Minnesota's music scene. If you're interested in talking about all things music related and meeting interesting people from our local community, you're in the right place. Welcome to Secrets from the Scene. My name is Stephen Helvig, and I'm your host. If this is your first time joining us, thank you so much for tuning in and giving me some of your time. I really appreciate it. This podcast is for local musicians. It specifically covers our local Twin Cities music scene. We have artists and producers, engineers, retail owners, photographers, and creative brands as of today. But it's basically anybody that has anything to do with the music scene in some way. And this podcast aims to educate people, to help particularly new artists out, but also to connect people and inform everyone of what's going on inside our amazing, creative Twin Cities music scene. Today's guest is also a perfect example of somebody that's doing just that, but in more than just the music scene. Music is a part of what Flavor World is all about, but it goes far, far beyond that into clothing and video and several other art forms. I'll let Drew tell us more about that, but I've known of Flavor World now for a year or two, just through online Instagram stuff, and have been super impressed by everything that you guys put out, the aesthetic, the values, for lack of a better way of putting that. But I think that your mission is awesome, and I'm really excited to have you on to talk. Today's episode is going to not only be about Flavor World, but it's also going to be about, I think, a mission that we both share, which is connecting people, connecting creatives, and trying to make the scene healthier by doing so. You've been doing that in a lot of different ways, and I'm excited to break all those down. The podcast does that through, these episodes and information. Before we do all that, I got a quick bio, and then we'll dive into this thing.
Great.
Flavor World is a creative brand based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Their mission is to empower and inspire creatives and to work and leave the world more creative than they found it. Flavor World offers products and services, including clothing, like their own merch and printing services for others, events, including shows, fashion shows, networking events, workshops, festivals, and videos, tutorials, skits, music live sets, and then, of course, music. Their shop basement acts as a rehearsal and recording space. They host shows. I went to Flavor Fest this year, which was cool. And they provide marketing for artists, and then paintings, murals, art pieces, and I'm sure there's more. That's already an amazing amount of stuff. Please welcome Drew Kinkade.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. I meant to ask you, did I say your last name right?
Yeah, Kinkade.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Sometimes it's how it sounds, or, how it's spelled, how it sounds, but not always.
Yeah, I get Kinkade a lot, so.
Okay, that wouldn't have been my first guess, but.
Well, yeah, you nailed the bio.
Hey.
Really appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah, just to start things off, if that's all right. Yeah, Flavor World.
Please.
We do a lot of different stuff in the art scene. Started in 2018, just kind of as a clothing brand, but always had the dream and the goal of kind of expanding elsewhere in the art scene. And really the first leap beyond clothing we made was music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll get more into it later, but a lot of that was because the music scene really seems to have like a tight community. And I think a lot of that comes pretty naturally to the music scene. It's almost inherent or forced in it. I've noticed because, bands, it takes multiple people to make the music, or live shows are such a integral part of just being a band or a musician that you're forced to work with venues and talk to other bands. And it's got this community element kind of forced to it. More so than I've noticed in other arts, where you can kind of just be an individual doing your thing. And so that's kind of why we leaped into the music scene first, was that community aspect that we're, like you said, both pretty passionate about, and, just connecting people and bringing people together. So yeah, and then we can cover more, but fast forward a few years and now we're doing all sorts of different stuff. So.
Yeah, we're definitely going to cover more because I'm fascinated by how much you have your hands in. But let's just talk about you a little bit. Tell us about your background.
Yeah, so I started as, I would say not an artist. I really wanted to be an engineer, largely because it's what my dad was. I was good at math and science, and I felt like the world really wanted me to be an engineer. Engineers make the world money more so than artists do, I feel like. So I just feel like there was kind of this like unspoken pressure or pipeline that kind of led me to do that. And I was happy doing it. I wasn't like doing my passion, but I was happy. Went to school for it at U of M for a couple of years, and that's really when things started to switch over as the engineering studies got more serious. I was feeling more and more of a draw towards arts and just kind of doodling in class. And through that, I really was noticing that that's really what I wanted to be doing. But I felt kind of late to the game. I'd never really done art seriously before. I'd put all my focus in this like kind of totally other side of the mind. And Flavor World started just because I had some funny doodles that I wanted to put on shirts and sell to friends, and just kind of the nature of who I am. I got, I guess, carried away with these projects where it's like, oh, I want to make shirts, and well, I want to make them myself. So I started like painting on there, but it's like, that looks horrible. Like, how do the professionals do it? Oh, screen printing, what's that? And then, a process of 2-3 months of teaching myself how to screen print just so I could make a few shirts. But then I knew how to make shirts, and I was just kind of like, well, it's always kind of been a dream in the back of my mind to, do a clothing brand and build something like that. So that was the perfect opportunity, and didn't take long. I dropped out of school and went fully in. So
interesting. So a lot of this happens while you're in college.
Mm-hmm.
What was your art exposure in high school?
In high school, it wasn't so much. I went to a very big high school, so there was a lot of options, but I didn't take any of the art classes. Because like I said, I really thought I was an engineer. I just very early in my life kind of just signed it off. That's what I am. That's who I'll be. And so I took a lot of engineering classes in high school, but really not much. I was in band because you needed some art credit. So I did band, and, I had fun, but I didn't like think of it as an art or my passion, or, I wasn't taking it too serious, just kind of getting the credits. So I had a bit of exposure. Towards the end of high school, I got more friends that were doing bands of their own, like little side projects, and maybe ceramics or something. My brother's always been a great musician. But yeah, me personally, I unfortunately kind of shied away from the art stuff early on. So not too much exposure, really.
Huh. Well, I mean, it's unique, I think, in that sense. So, okay, it starts coming out of you. Mm-hmm. You're in college, you start realizing, man, I want to do this. First, it's sort of into screen printing, making some shirts, selling that. What were the next steps after that?
Well, to keep doing that, really. I got the first collection done for Flavor World and felt great about it, but something about doing the second one, I remember really was scary for me. I think it was just like following up and like trying to meet my own expectations and make it cooler and make it grow. And it was a lot of pressure I wasn't really ready for because I didn't fully think of myself as an artist still. But really my like artist journey started right around that time. I remember all I had done was, screen print some shirts and some doodling. And I had a friend that his friend was planning a art show in Minneapolis, and someone dropped out and they needed one more person last minute. It was like 2 weeks away. And somehow my name got thrown in there, and I didn't consider myself an artist at all in the slightest. I thought it was some mystical profession reserved for crazy people, But I got into this art show and I accepted it, and being in the art show was really a big moment for me. Being surrounded by people that were artists. They did believe they were artists. And most notably, a couple people in that show were local visual artists that I really looked up to. And that was a big turning point for me, where I was like, okay, I'm in this art show with these people I consider artists and look up to as artists. So maybe I'm an artist as well. And that was a big turning point for me, because then I was like, really started to look into myself and my own artistry. Mm-hmm. And I started to paint more and paint for the first time, actually. It was around then. Draw more seriously, started experimenting with music and more creative stuff with clothing. And that's really when the whole world opened for me. It was around that time.
Sure. That was like, what year would that have been?
That was probably 2018. I think it was
Okay.
at the end of 2018.
Okay. Wow. So this is all at the very beginning of Flavor World getting started.
Yep,
Okay. So at that point, now you're getting more bold, perhaps,
definitely.
right? But what happens between that and you like opening up your shop?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, once I quit school, that was definitely
Okay. Yeah.
a big moment for me. That was in 2018 as well. It all happened pretty fast, honestly.
Wow. That is remarkably fast.
Yeah, it was quite the switch for me. But once I quit school, it really just like changed the focus of, I guess, my life and really like career trajectory specifically. You know, a lot of people wanted me to finish school, especially the parents, and rightfully so. They were like, okay, you just have 2 more years, just get the
Right.
degree and,
Right.
you know, then do whatever you want. But part of me didn't want to do that because I really fell kind of headfirst into the whole art world thing. I felt like if I had the engineering degree, you know, for better or for worse, it would be a bit of a safety net, something I could fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of scared me, actually. I didn't want that. I wanted to go fully into art without looking back at all, as well as, you know, having those 2 years of school and tuition as well. But yeah, it was around that time that it was just like, okay, I'm going to go fully in on this. And quitting school really helped me do that. And then I got paint on it right now, but I got a Flavor World tattoo. That was,
Sure.
I think, the beginning of 2019. And then at that point, it's like, all right, this is it. This is everything that I need to do.
Yeah.
From there, it's just diving into the different little facets of it. Again, a lot of it was clothing. And I mean, figuring out how to make money on this whole thing was also a huge driving force.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just kind of clothing for a little while there. And then right around probably towards the end of 2020 is when the music stuff started to come up.
Okay.
What happened is at the beginning of 2020 and through the summer, I was living in a house with a bunch of roommates and I kind of had my little art space in the back, but we were moving out and I didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to go. I kind of ignored it and didn't really look. And then it's like, oh crap, I got like a month to find a place to go. And I found a little studio space and I really felt like I had to decide because I couldn't afford both an apartment and a studio space. And it's like, okay, am I going to work in my apartment or am I going to live in my studio? It felt like one or the other. And I chose to live in the studio, which definitely had its drawbacks, but on the positives, it definitely helped push me further into it and kind of fuel the hunger to grow these different things that I'm working on. And it was around that time I met a friend, Brett Havens, who's a audio engineer extraordinaire. He's just so impressive at it. And meeting him was really good because I always wanted to go into the music scene, but without really playing an instrument or having the technical ability, it was kind of hard to venture into it. But he really opened that door for me and allowed me to start working with bands in like pretty professional way because of his audio abilities. And then I came with the brand and a lot of video, photography, visual arts abilities. And that kind of started to open that door. And yeah, really just kept going from there.
Yeah. And then it's just the expansion of the community. One person does this, or introduces you to the next, to the next, to the next. Yeah, that's fairly classic. I might be hopping around a little bit here, but I think it might just help a little bit. Like, I want to back up to one of the things that you said of like, and figuring out how to make money, you know, in the first place, back to the clothing side of stuff. You know, okay, you move into a studio at that point, you're going, it's time to start selling stuff, right? Or whether it's a product or a service or whatever. What were your first, I assume it was clothing was the first thing you started to actually sell? Okay.
Yep. So the first thing we actually sold was Flavor World branded clothing. So our art, or it says Flavor World on the shirt, things like that. It went pretty well, but it didn't pay rent or all the bills. Just we weren't big enough at the time. The thing that really helped us was it was around that time I needed more money so I could pay for things. And I was like, okay, well, I know how to screen print now. So maybe I can get a job at a screen print shop, you know. And I started applying and got a bunch of no's and was frustrated. Just they weren't hiring was the only thing. So got a bunch of no's. And I had a friend, Mary, who I told her I was looking for a job at a screen print shop, and she was like, well, you know how to screen print. Why don't you just start your own screen print shop? And that was another one of those moments where I was just like, whoa, like you're right. And so then really decided, okay, I'm going to market these skills and not just screen print for Flavor World, but open it up to anyone that might need shirts. And that was awesome. And to this day, that is the main financial driver of Flavor World, is just doing this freelance printing. So
sure,
for a lot of local bands, we're their merch printer and sometimes designer as well.
Okay.
Other local businesses and things like that, just acting as a service for artists to help them not only get their merch made, but we really believe that, especially for musicians and especially kind of underground, newer musicians, so much of the money is made from selling merch at the shows.
Oh, yeah.
And so we really want to help these artists make money and help them get their merch made. You know, it might be their first time doing something like that. So just help them through the process, and helps our business at the same time.
Of course.
So we just like to think that it's kind of win-win for everybody. And that's really been steady and solid and helping us help people and meet new people, as well as keeping the business alive at the same time.
Great. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely, for all the bands that are out there listening, if you're looking to get shirts printed right now,
please do.
We'll link that up in the show notes. Reach out to Flavor World. I'm sure that's great. So you guys offer the design as well as the printing?
We can, yeah.
Okay.
Not as much, just because that's, then you start to get into more creative work, and it's a little more working with them to match their aesthetic. And so we do, but it's just more time consuming, and we're very busy right now. So it's harder to accept those jobs, but the printing, we're always ready for more.
Sure. Well, and I imagine that you probably know a few designers. If you just want to outsource or whatever.
Totally. And that's partly just a good note to where Flavor World has kind of grown into. At the beginning, it was largely just me. I had a few friends helping out, but it was really just kind of my passion project. But I always really had the intention on getting more people involved, like not just for my workload, but just kind of bringing other artists in. I don't want Flavor World to just be me and my art, but rather a community or a collective of creatives contributing to it. So yeah, now at this point, we do have a few people on the team and connected to us that are great designers, and we can help kind of make those connections and get something made and get it printed as well.
Yeah. All right, well, let's cover some of the other things that you have your hands in quick before we move on beyond this. So on the music side, there's the merch. Since we're talking music, let's talk about the other things. At some point, I read that you started a record label. There's a rehearsal space. Is that stuff still active?
Yeah. It's less active because we're really good at biting off more than we can chew and then figuring out a way to somehow chew it,
Right.
So there's a lot going on. We're still doing shows. We have the Flavor Jam, which is kind of an open jam and musician meetup, we call it, in Uptown the third Wednesday of each month. But when it started, Flavor World Records, that was right when I met Brett. And our first project with that was recording live sessions of local bands inside the studio I was living in St. Paul. And that was wonderful. I mean, that opened so many doors for me. We had to stop it after about 25 episodes with 25 different bands, just because it honestly made no money at all and took a bunch of time to mix, master all the audio.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work. And me and Brett both put so much attention to detail and really cared a lot about it, which is great for the final product, but not for our time management. So it took a lot of time, didn't make any money. So eventually we had to stop, but we did it for about a couple years, and it was just wonderful. I just had so much fun and met so many people through that. I mean, it was really cool going into it. I only knew 2 or 3 local bands, but just through doing those and getting them online, either people started to reach out to us, or the bands that we had in for a session would, they know 4 or 5 other bands that they can recommend, and kind of that chain of connections continues. And that really opened the door for me to the world of music, the music scene here in the Twin Cities, through connections and experience. Through that, we were like, okay, well, what if we hosted a show? And so we tried and hosted a show, had a lot of fun, did it again, just kept doing it, getting a little better, a little more efficient every time, to the point where we're at now where, yeah, you said you came to Flavor Fest, our second Flavor Fest just back in August. And that's a big festival that is beyond music. It kind of tries to bring all of the things together, but really our event hosting experience began just doing, 3-band bills with local bands that we met through doing these live sessions.
Are you still doing shows at your current studio?
Not at the current studio. Okay. It's not quite big enough. We'll do like smaller events there. So we've done some like networking events or art workshops there. But my friend Eli had a venue called the Chop Shop, which was just this perfect house show venue in Como, Minneapolis. And so we did, I forget how many, but it was 2 years, probably about 20 something shows there. And those were great. I mean, big shout out to Eli and Beck for really running that. I like to say I got things started there. I came in with the most experience initially on running shows. And it's like, okay, we got to do this. But after a couple, Eli really got the drill and did that, and kind of just helped more with the branding and maybe some marketing for it. But that was a great thing that sadly they moved out and it has concluded. But no shows at the shop. We will still record there and bands will rehearse there, but nothing really open to the public there.
Okay. But it is a rehearsal space for a few people. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. And then on the label side, you still have bands that you're actively working with?
Yeah. So it operates more as like a collective than like a traditional label.
Okay.
We don't really have bands signed. We didn't want to like own the rights and then be responsible for the rights of music. That was just kind of a mess we weren't really interested in. So we're much more of like a collective, but also a service agency of sorts. I still don't really have the best word for it, but we do have bands we're closely connected with where it's like, okay, we did your live session, we can do your merch, we can do a photo shoot with your band, we can help market your band, help promote your show, do set design at the show, and just offering like all these different services for the bands. So there are bands we closely work with and have good connections with, but no one's signed on the label. So Flavor World Records, I guess, is maybe a bit of a misnomer, at least in the traditional sense, but I think record labels are evolving. So
100% agreed. Yeah. And especially I think on the indie side, especially like very small side, like a lot of anybody that's calling themselves a label isn't acting in a traditional sense. I think that's pretty normal because in a lot of ways, a traditional label is offering a fair amount of money as a part of a record deal.
Yeah.
So, but that's great. I mean, is that something that you're also looking to expand? Are you kind of at capacity with that? Are you doing more of those services for hire?
Yeah. I mean, the services for hire, we're always really looking for more of, and kind of like we touched on earlier, we've got people that are connected and kind of help out that can take on some of those jobs. I think in some ways we are a bit at capacity with things, but we're also looking to expand. That's kind of like the infamous Flavor World situation, honestly, is being at capacity, but looking to expand into new things. But the music scene and doing the record label was just so wonderful. And I felt like we could really help the community as well as grow our band or our brand and experience. So I'm definitely looking to lean more into it and kind of get that going again. The main thing is just going to be figuring out how to make money on it and
that's always the
make it profitable. Yeah.
All right, we're going to come back to that in a second. I just want to cover a few of the other like areas you have involvement in, and then we'll spend more time in music, of course, because this audience is probably coming mostly from that side. But we've talked about some of the clothing and apparel stuff. We've talked about a little bit overview of the music. Tell me about the other areas of the arts that you're working in.
So we've always loved making videos. That was kind of from day one, personal passion of mine, just making silly videos with friends. So that's always been a part of it and still is. The latest big one is Flavor Mag, which we've got some on the table there.
Oh yeah, you should.
Amazingly. Yes. Flavor Mag. This is volume 2 right here. It's a arts and entertainment magazine all in the Twin Cities artists and creatives. And we're really just looking to kind of give a platform to local artists that don't really have the platform they deserve. Really, there's so much talent here in the Twin Cities that just doesn't really get out there, isn't being heard by some of these other pockets of the scene. This was kind of our way of bringing all the different mediums that Flavor World works into one product, as well as showcasing all the terrific artists that we know about, but doesn't seem like the world does yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, Flavor Mag is definitely a big one that we're working on now. Like we said a second ago, there's also the festival, Flavor Fest, that we do once a year at Indeed Brewing. That just keeps growing every year. And, someday it could be cool to take it on the road or something, do a traveling festival. Or otherwise, we do photo shoots for artists.
Okay.
I'm a painter as well, so I do a lot of painting. And lately I've been doing a lot of like upcycling of furniture, getting something for $10 on Facebook and fixing it up, painting it and selling it for a little more. That's been great. That's more of a personal thing though. Set design, we've done like stage and set design for videos and shows for different artists and organizations a few times. That's a great one. I made rugs for a while. That was interesting. Murals, kind of just marketing services, which I've touched on a bit, but it is kind of long-term goal of ours to grow more into like a marketing agency of sorts, where it's like, okay, we've got this magazine, we've got this festival, we've got videos, we do other events, we got talented creatives that can help us create the marketing content, and we've got these different platforms to put these marketing ads and different things for different people or events. So really just trying to bring that all together and offering packages to advertise through Flavor World, whether it's a new release, new product, or new show or album coming up. So that's a new frontier. Yeah, the list goes on. I can't even think of all of them all the time, but that's the big ones for sure.
Okay, cool. How often do you put out a Flavor Mag?
Flavor Mag currently comes out 4 times a year, quarterly, every 3 months. We have a kind of a exclusive info. We've been thinking about actually reducing it to 1 every 4 months, so 3 times a year. Really just because it's a ton of work. Like
I know.
We knew it'd be a lot of work, but the thing that really has been tripping me up is just like the details. I mean, the endless details. It's, I hear it's similar with like making a music project where it's like, okay, yeah, we can record the music, write the music, and that's great. But then it's just like the hours and hours of like, oh, that note was like a little flat, or the little mixing things, or the exact position of the mic. Like there's just all these details that you don't really always factor in when you're getting into something new like that, that once you go through the whole process, they're very apparent. So we've just felt a little rushed with them, and that's really not what we want to feel. We really want to make sure that each one is, given all. So that's unconfirmed, but we might reduce it, and I've got no shame in that. I think one thing we're good about at Flavor World is just kind of being vulnerable about the creative process. And it's like, if you got to slow down and, give it a little more time, that's what you got to do. Make the best art you can.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes 1 step forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, right?
Absolutely.
That if you can get your process together and you figure out what is, the strategy, sometimes that's what can be what holds you back, or it can be the personnel. Mm-hmm. It can be a specific process, but eventually you get better at all these things, And I think that there's something to be said about, being vulnerable, being bold, taking risks, just trying stuff, and then pivot.
Absolutely.
If it's not perfect, fine. Then make an adjustment and keep moving. You don't have to have everything worked out ahead of time, for eternity. Yeah. It's a ridiculous expectation. So, the fact that you've already got really two great magazines out now, there's still process for more coming down the pipeline. That's a win.
Totally. Yeah. And I completely agree with that. And like, we've had enough time to make these magazines, and we have time to make more. I think the thing that's getting to us now is all these kind of more auxiliary things around it. where it's like, oh, we want to be selling ads in them more to bigger companies, and we want to increase the distribution in stores
so that you can sell ads.
Yeah, so we can sell ads. And it's things like that that are kind of getting put on the back burner because we're spending so much time making the content in the magazine. So it's like, okay, well, if we slow down a little, we'll have one more month per magazine, and that'll give us just more breathing room to focus on some of these other sides of the business and the creative endeavor, and really kind of do what we think is best for the magazine long term.
How many people are on Flavor World staff?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's probably about 10 people that are really closely connected that I know I can always count on. But really, there's, more of a core group of 4 people that I'm meeting up with every week and are really putting in the hours on the magazine and the events we do. So really, 4 to roughly 10 people.
I'm sure, you have a big fest, then you're asking for more help, more people come in. Are the core 4 like all individually responsible for different parts of the business? Everybody just shares things? Mm-hmm. Is that sort of fluid, or is it kind of structured in a way that makes sense for the expansion?
Yeah, it's kind of structured, but kind of loosely structured, mainly just around what everyone's strengths are. Mm-hmm. We're all different artists, and so it's like my friend Eli helps a lot with the magazine, and he was a journalism major.
Oh, yeah.
So he's a great writer, and he just knows a lot of the technical stuff about that, and so he'll put a lot of time into that as well as other things. But another person is Kimmy, who's like a illustrator, graphic designer, and so she'll do a lot of that, whether it's making a show poster for us or something for the magazine. And yeah, just that list goes on, photographer friends. So it's kind of structured based around what their strengths are.
Yep.
But we all kind of help out in other ways or where it's needed. And like you said, it definitely ramps up when it's like, okay, the festival's coming up. We got to get everything together. Everyone gets a little busier then. But the magazine has kind of helped keep that, core 4 people consistently busy.
Yep.
Because we're always working on the next one. So we just got to keep that moving, keep in contact. And that's been pretty steady.
Yeah. Are you looking to hire more people?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think I need to hire more people because we are pretty busy. But it's kind of a paradox that I feel like I'm in, where it's like, we need to hire more people in order to make more money, but we need to make more money in order to hire more people.
Totally.
So I'm trying to figure that out. But yeah, short answer, we definitely got to hire more people. And that's probably what it'll take, is just taking that risk or getting a loan or an investor or something. But definitely looking to hire more people, yeah.
Let's take a minute to talk about our sponsor, Helvig Productions, which just so happens to be my studio. Are you a musician here in the Twin Cities, currently releasing music and ready to upgrade your sound? If you're tired of underwhelming recordings and want a polished, professional sound that gets people talking, we're here to help. We'll work with you to transform your next song into a production that feels impeccable, gets your friends singing along, and catches the attention of your soon-to-be new fans. And here's my guarantee. Give us 7 days to deliver a mix you love, or we'll keep working for free until you're 100% satisfied. If that sounds compelling, here's how it works. First, we'll start with a pre-production analysis where we focus on the core of everything, the songwriting and arrangement. We'll give you an honest, outside perspective to make sure your song is on track for the sound you want. And if it needs a few tweaks, we'll give you some tips and work with you to make improvements. If you want a deeper writing collaboration, we can bring in a specialized songwriter to assist. Either way, you keep full ownership of your music, no matter what. Once that's locked in, we'll jump into the professional recording and production process. This is where we capture the best performance of each part from start to finish. We'll handle everything from detailed recording to expert vocal production, editing, tuning, mixing, and mastering. Plus, all our best production assistants along the way. We've got top-notch gear, a great live room, and most importantly, over 15 years of experience helping artists get their best performances. This process has helped our clients build real fan bases and even land on Spotify playlists. We've got the results to back it up. Sharkoff built a fan base from scratch with over 99,000 YouTube subscribers and over 60 million views across platforms. Silver Warehouse got their very first single playlisted by Spotify, racking up over 3 million plays. Waltzing on Waves had a song from their debut album playlisted on Spotify, amassing 2 million plays. Ludwig landed sync deals with brands like Hyundai and shows like All American. and we've got over 80 5-star reviews on Google. So if that's all you need to hear and you're ready to chat, head to helvigproductions.com/let's connect or click the link in our show notes. We'll have you fill out a quick questionnaire, and if we're not a match, we'll let you know up front. We only work with clients who are a strong fit for our strengths because we're not satisfied until you are. If this sounds good to you, click that link and let's get started. I'm excited to see what we can create together. Let's recap a little bit of what we've discussed in terms of Flavor World so far, just for people that are like, I love this, I want to support it, or maybe there's a service that, they've got top of mind that they need. You do things from like most obvious, or at least most accessible at this point, for sure, t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, any other merchandise that you're...
Yeah, I mean, anything you can screen print on.
Okay.
We can make some totes and shorts and whatever.
Okay. Basically fabric stuff? I don't know enough about screen printing.
Yeah, fabric stuff, and more specifically is things that can lie flat.
Okay.
Because you can't really screen print a curved object. You can, but it's hard and we don't really do it. But anything that is fabric or paper and can lie flat, we can screen print on it.
Okay. So you've got that. Advertising in the magazine.
Yep.
Right? So if you're a local business and you want to... What kind of distribution do you have right now?
So we got 500 of the first volume that were all sold, and we're still selling the second one, but we got another 500 and we're getting through those. We're in a few stores locally. Good. We sell them online, got some subscribed readers.
Yep.
It's just physical print right now. We don't have any online of the articles or a PDF version of it yet. We might in the future, but we really like the uniqueness of the physical print and people having it on their coffee table like this. So yeah, we're just keep trying to grow the distribution. But I think the big thing with Flavor Mag is our demographic. It's very young and arts, which infamously, the 16 to 35-year-old range, which is our primary audience. They're a little harder to reach with a lot of advertising. And so that's definitely a pro for advertising in Flavor Mag, is being able to connect to your audience.
Yeah, it's a specific niche. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so the screen printing, there's advertising. In terms of the other services, would you say that somebody could call you up and ask for like online marketing help? Is that something that you would quote them? Photography?
Yep, photography, videography.
Videography. So if somebody wanted a music video, you're ready to do that as well?
Yep, I've got a little portfolio of music videos.
Okay.
As well as a couple of the people I've worked with. And both those tie in really closely to the online marketing side of things.
Okay. What does that look like?
What's that?
The online marketing.
Well, we haven't done too much of it aside from ourselves, our own business. But we have helped bands like, okay, let's do a few photo shoots. We'll edit them and you can use these to, promote the band online. Or a lot of it is like when a band has a show coming up, we have a service, what we call media days, where it's just like, oh, come through the shop. We'll do a photo shoot with everyone really creatively. We'll get some video clips for you and do all the editing with the captions or whatever. And just get them in the shop and help them kind of generate this content that they can then use to promote their shows.
I think that's awesome. I'm sure some people will be down for that, or at least it's worth trying. I mean, there's a lot.
I think so. Yeah.
I work with so many people that don't have enough content, at all times. So I hope more people take advantage of that. What have I missed so far that we've already talked about?
Well, we also do, we could do album art. We talked about music videos. There's definitely some other big ones that I'm also blanking on, but event hosting, set design. We'll do set design for shows just to fit the theme. I've also hosted a couple game shows before. We did a game show called The Flavor is Right at one of our events, and someone in the audience wanted to hire me to do it for their event. So could also be hired to get on stage and host a game show if anyone needs that. Merch. We can do a bit of recording services, help with that. At least I can connect to people that can. Shows. I mean, I don't know. A lot of what we do is we try to do a lot of free things, which is hard for business, but
Great.
In other ways, it's really good for business and good for the community, no doubt.
Yeah.
But we just try to like bring people together. So just really, if I could ask one thing of the listeners, it'd be come out to some of these free events. We'll host like musician meetups or networking events, just trying to bring these different artists in the same room to talk. We got open jams, like I said. Our festival is free. Really, it's a great way to support. If we're doing these free events, it means a lot more if people are actually coming to them. So
Right. Yeah. What do you think is on the horizon then for Flavor World? Like, what's the next thing that you want to try to accomplish?
well, I'm really focused on this magazine and kind of the things surrounding it.
Okay.
I really want to keep it growing and have it be really an important part of the scene here and help it, communicate information about the talented people and the things going on to other people. And I really hope to grow it to a point where it's not just these, younger artists in my circle and adjacent circles that are reading it, but it's the moms from Minnetonka that are reading it and the, grandparents down in Shakopee. And I really just kind of want it to be more of this like staple of just what's going on in the area. People love news and local happenings. So,
well, we used to have city pages once upon a time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there is a big hole. And I've heard a lot of people bring that up ultimately, that for all of its flaws, because it did have flaws, it did serve a central purpose of kind of giving people an understanding of what's going on that is missing. And especially with how now we are so, reliant on our social media feeds for what's happening, but those are very different from person to person. What you are going to see in your feed is entirely different than what I'm going to see in mine. And the benefit of having some sort of centralized information is that you might get better at representing everything. Now, part of the problem with that too is it's hard to represent everything.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot of great creatives out there. So we're trying to showcase as many as we can.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point because I've thought about that where it's like, there's a good chance, the hypothetical mother from Minnetonka I mentioned, there's a good chance she'll never be exposed to an Instagram post of ours. Just the way the algorithm works.
Yeah.
It just might never cross her feed.
Yep.
But still, she might really enjoy art or local art or want to buy a painting from a local artist or whatever, but just doesn't have that exposure to it. So we think the magazine will help open that door. Like you said, a central and really, as I keep saying, giving a platform to a lot of these artists that might not be able to reach that hypothetical person. Hopefully we can kind of build that platform, get them in the loop and get them reading and expose them to some wonderful things happening in the area that they otherwise might not have been exposed to.
That's awesome. Let's move on to kind of the bigger topic, the overarching topic that we've already touched on in a lot of ways, but this idea of connecting the scene, because it's such a big part of what you guys are already doing. And it's also a personal passion of mine, of specifically within the music side of things, that I like to see when there's more collaboration, when there's more mutual support, more community among things. So first I thought we've already covered all the things you're doing, and I think that's pretty self-evident of how it is making connections, specifically through the events, right? You've got free events, you're doing some workshops, which we should say quickly, if somebody wants to go to these events, you said it's every third Wednesday in Uptown at the Green Room for Flavored Jam.
Yep.
And then in terms of the workshops and maybe the other, whether it's networking or art workshops or that stuff, that's happening out of your shop, right?
Yep. That's usually out of our shop or sometimes at a different venue. Those other ones are a little less regular.
So they would just maybe follow you online to find out when that's happening?
Yep. The best place is Instagram, but we also keep our Facebook active and Twitter as well. So,
okay.
And just follow us at Flavor World and you'll be hearing about these different things we're doing.
Yeah, that's great. There's events. So that obviously you just get to know people and get to see what's going on. In the music world, there's live shows, and that's a big part of it. Let's first talk about what are the obvious advantages of doing this, just to lay out why this is important in the first place. I think that you can point to a few things right off the bat that are fairly self-explanatory, but they're worth saying, which is first, it might be this is where you're going to get your start of finding your people. If you're a musician, this is where you might find your band members. So it can be your network if you rely on other people to do your thing. some art forms don't. Some people just fly solo. So if that's your case, I think another advantage is just simply the educational opportunities of seeing what else is happening out there and what level everything is happening at. Because that can be eye-opening to go, oh, either in your case of going, maybe I am a real musician. I guess I am kind of doing it at this level. And that can be empowering. Or it can be the other way around of like, ooh, I need to work on this more. Like, there's some amazing stuff. This is really cool. And it can inspire you to improve your own skills because you're just being aware of what's happening elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you're going to a workshop that's educational too, right? You're learning how to do stuff. I think another thing can just be the mental health of your community, right? The mutual support, the being around other people that are like-minded and how helpful that can be. You know, in the music side, that might mean people that you can attend shows with or that are going to attend your shows eventually, and that can be reciprocated. But in the art world, it can mean just also other people that you can work with and collaborate in different ways. It can mean supporting each other's showcases and so on. Anything come to mind for you in terms of the other benefits of getting people more interconnected?
Yeah, I mean, the big one, as you touched on, is definitely the network of things. You know, just like an example is maybe a band. They make really good music. They're great at making music, but just visual art is not their thing. But now they've got this album and they need to market the album and have this album art, but they don't know any visual artists, so they just do some lame album art and merch design or whatever it is, when little did they know just down the road a great, perfect graphic designer is living right there that would have loved to have helped. They just were never connected. So, I mean, that's just a little example of the network, I think, is really the strength in numbers sort of thing, and we can all help each other. But other things I think of are just like even attendance or support wise. Like, there's a lot of pockets within the art scene and even specifically the music scene where it's like there's a lot of people that like going to live music shows, but you know, the indie rock scene might not even hear about the shows happening in the punk scene or the rap scene here in Minneapolis. And sometimes I think about like a lot of the people going to these shows are just kind of the people within those scenes. Like those are the kinds of shows they go to. And that's all right. Everyone's got their preference and genre and things. But I think about like, well, if the whole rap scene knew about how cool some of these shows were and vice versa, you know, both shows might get hypothetical couple hundred more people at them, and that just helps everybody. It helps the bands pay and the venues, and so really just even attendance wise, I think connecting people is huge. There's a lot of people that don't even know the Twin Cities have a rap scene or a this or that scene, and that sometimes just blows my mind. I mean, it makes sense, but I'm just like, I wish that wasn't the case, and I think we could all support each other a little more, and being connected would help a lot with that. But also, again, like just motivation and education. As you said, you had some great points. That's very important and very empowering. And like for me, like just getting into that one art show when I was first starting really, I guess, changed my life in a way. And, you know, it was so simple, but just kind of knew a couple of the right people and it happened. And you never know when something like that's going to happen. So knowing people is going to increase the rate that it might. I also think just kind of on the bigger picture of things, like starting to establish more of a like an industry here, you know, a creative industry where Minneapolis and St. Paul becomes a destination for people that want to get creative work done. And I think the industry will be much better off if we're all working together and we're all talking to each other and helping each other out, and people know like, oh, I can go record at, you know, this studio, but then he knows a visual artist and this, and he can connect me with those people, and they're all right down the road.
Yep.
I think that would really help not only individual artists, but just kind of bringing the art to the Twin Cities in a way I dream of seeing it happen.
I agree. I would love to see that. I mean, it reminds me of the old saying of the rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Exactly.
And when things work, right? When things are going well, you have all of these things happening simultaneously, right? You have people mutually supporting each other's events. You have educational opportunities and people helping each other there. There's collaboration through whether that's the purpose is to collaborate to actually finish the product, meaning, hey, we can do the music side, and if you can do the video side, and you can do the graphic design side, and then at the end you have a finished product. That's something. But it can also be, let's collaborate because you have this audience and I have this audience, and now if we do this collaboration, we'll each benefit from this. It can be for those reasons. It can be to trade services. It can be for a number of different reasons. I think a lot of times we think about these things from the artist perspective, but one helpful way is to think about it from the fan's perspective. Because when these things happen, it's better for the fans, the people that have nothing to do with making it. They just want to enjoy it. They want to go out and be entertained in whatever fashion. So again, we can go back to the music side. If I go to a show, I love when the opening bands are great, right? Versus that was a filler, you know? And by having more connection, it just means that, yes, a lot of people might be there for the headliner. Maybe they have the biggest draw. But if all along the way, everybody that's playing on that bill is incredible, that's great for me, fan that came out. I feel like that was worth my $15, $20 or whatever I paid to get in, right? And I think that one of the big takeaways of having the scene be more connected is that the art gets better. Whether that means that show got better, or the cover art got better, the magazine gets better, the mural on the side of the building gets better, whatever it is, it lifts every aspect. And that can affect individually those artists that are creating it, sure, but it can affect the community on whole of liking where you live more. And to your point, wanting your city to be a destination. Now, these things don't happen overnight. They happen over generations. These little steps that we can take all do add up. And I think it starts with, well, I guess it can start in multiple ways. I won't say there's one specific way. I mean, I think that on one hand, it starts with artists talking to artists and saying, hey, let's get together to do something. I think it also comes down to a mindset of wanting to buy local. You know, there are other ways that you can do any one of these things. You can go get a graphic designer online. You can, you know, buy your guitar anywhere, right? But you can do it in town here. Mm-hmm. It does take like intention to want to keep it face to face, to do it in person. Sometimes that's not possible. But when it is, I think that's always beneficial, particularly if you can find people that you gel with. And then I think it takes events and things like that, which you're already working on. I'm also working on by trying to have people on and have a platform specifically in the music side of things to share what they're doing and to share what they're working with. But there's also obstacles to this. And I think that one of the biggest obstacles a lot of times comes down to money.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I'm sure you can talk to that because you're already coordinating a lot of people, right? People come in, hey, this is what I want to do. Everybody, I guess we'll back up a second. When it comes to this idea is not that hard to sell. I think most listeners would be like, hey, yeah, I love that. I do want to. But then there's money, right? And it's pretty easy to get stuff together if it can be done for free. If there's a trade, if there's some sort of mutual benefit that's worth the amount of time it takes to make it, whatever, it's happening. But at some point, everybody's got to make some money. And I think that's where things get really, really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is, like you said, like shopping locally, like if you're already going to spend the money somewhere, putting it locally is going to make a big difference. I think part of the problem with that is a lot of people, like we said, they don't even know about the different places, or they don't know that there's a great ceramics artist down the road that they could support. And so getting more exposure to them, I think, is a key part. But it also takes the fan or the person that's buying to make the decision to shop locally as well.
And a lot of times the fact is that the local option isn't always going to be your cheapest. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible for the local artist to compete with Amazon with some mass-produced thing. It's not going to happen. Now, theoretically, the local thing should be better.
Yeah.
And, because there's more attention into it, more detail, maybe high quality product. I don't know. But even if they are all the same, like consider again the long-term benefit to your community, to that artist of spending a little bit more money on your local option.
Totally. Yeah. And no doubt money is a huge roadblock with, all of life, but
yeah,
definitely in the art world where there's infamously not a ton of it. But I definitely would like to emphasize that I think there's tons of easy, free ways that people can make a difference in kind of connecting the scene and helping out other artists and creatives. One thing I think about is like our networking events the thing is I like to think most of our events are kind of networking events in a way.
Sure.
Because I always say, like, when we host a dedicated networking event, I love it because for me, it's the easiest event we host. It's really as simple as just getting people in a room and then maybe a few conversation starters, but just letting them go. Like it just runs itself because when people are in a room with like-minded people or other interesting people, very naturally they'll connect and talk and network. And so I think, showing up to events is a huge thing. Just literally just showing up. And then if you're feeling it, starting a conversation with someone new. It's like, I feel like it seems very minor and a lot of the times it is. Not that much is going to come from it. But when enough people are doing that in a scene, I think it just really makes a deep impact with the roots of it and connecting these different pockets and these different people. And someone you saw at the last show and talked to for 10 minutes, well, they're at this next event and now I saw what you posted online and now all of a sudden you're friends keeping up with each other. And I just feel like connections like that, you never know where they're going to lead. You never know what they'll do for the world. And I just think it's absolutely essential that we're out here meeting new people. So that's another like free way people can make a big difference is kind of just showing up when possible and meeting someone new. But yeah, money is still a problem, especially when we're talking about like bringing the industry here. You said it might take a generation to do something like that, as much as we dream of seeing it happen. And that's very true. It's not cheap to build a multi-million-dollar production studio somewhere or, a recording studio like this. Like, it's difficult. So it's a tall task that is going to require a lot of money. And thankfully, the state, the county, and the city are pretty good at funding arts and grants. I think relative to the nation, we're pretty high up there, and that's good. But it's still going to take a whole lot more than that, a whole lot more than what the city has to really grow and create what I think we all would love to have. So somehow finding a way for the millions of art dollars to start coming this way a little more would really be beneficial.
But to some extent, that does come down to like having some things be a little bit more centralized so that it's not, because there are a lot of things happening in town, but it's pretty fractured. There are certain pockets of scenes that are bigger, but a lot of little ones, just a lot of little ones. And so if you think that you're in one of those little ones or not, either way, like look for opportunities to share resources. And what I mean by that is in the music world, that might be like, why don't we do a show with some other people that are not in our specific scene, but we think our fans will enjoy both styles. Spreading things out that way can be a really good way to start. With visual artists, it could be just different mediums of visual artists coming together for a showcase, or maybe combining these live events as you have with Flavor Fest, where there's music and visual artists in the same event. It takes more planning, it takes more work, but hopefully, theoretically, you can pull bigger audiences in. And again, from the fans' perspective, that's more fun. It can feel more like, man, this was really worth my time coming out today. And I think if you're in that little pocket, if you can ask yourself, what would make this event the most exciting and rewarding event for the people that I want to attend, then you're on the right path to these things. So you can look around in your network and think, how could we mutually benefit from something? Is there a resource that I need that somebody else has that I could trade for? Whether that's trading your different skill sets to work on something together. There's also options like crowdfunding and grants that can be really helpful. And then, of course, particularly at the beginning of anybody's artist career, there's a lot of people that are just looking to expand their portfolio, to expand their work experience. You shared a lot of experiences of all the stuff that you guys did for free right away. And you still do a lot of stuff for free, don't get me wrong. But my mind goes back to the recording the live stuff in that first studio. And at some point, it was like, yeah, we can't do this for free anymore. You have to start charging for it. And so, that's also a place to start, but you do have to have a plan to transition into making some money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, one quick note on that is with the live sessions, we still don't want to charge the bands or the artists, and that's kind of why it stopped, because we're like, okay, we need to make money, but we'd have to charge the bands, hundreds of dollars to just do this, and we didn't feel right doing that. So ideally, we're going to look for like sponsors or some sort of funding that way, a grant even as well. But just as a note, because artists don't have much money. I mean, especially when they're just starting out and we're just starting out. It's like, there's not much money in this for anybody. So you're right. You got to do a lot for free and really just take opportunities as they come. And it's unfortunate at times. I wish I didn't believe artists got to work for free sometimes. But I think if you really want to make a name for yourself and get out there and get connected and get experience as well, you got to take those opportunities. And I think, have fun and learn a lot in the process. And I sure did. I mean, we did hundreds and hundreds of hours of work on just those live sessions for totally free, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Nothing. It was priceless for me. Just the people I met and the things I learned are truly priceless.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there are ways around this, but there's no doubting that there's some obstacles to it. But I think we've kind of covered the most important pieces of this, which are showing up, looking to your own community to see what kind of collaborations might exist. I think that there's a lot more that we could see. I've seen some local artists do feature on each other's songs, for instance. And I think that's awesome. I would like to see a lot more of that. I don't know on the visual stuff, that's less my scene in terms of I know less about it, but I'm guessing some of that's happening to some extent as well. Does anything else come to mind that you want to throw in here in terms of points about making these connections?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we've touched on it in other wordings, but just trying new things is definitely a big thing. And being okay with maybe it's not your thing or, maybe be open to go to a show that you might not like, maybe you don't like punk music, but try it out, go to the show, see what happens. I think a lot of people, kind of like me with engineering in my past, it's very easy to just kind of put yourself in a box. These are the shows I go to. This is my scene. This is my bubble. This is who I am. But you never know. You might go to a rap show or some art gallery that you normally wouldn't have gone to. And it just opens up the world to you and you learn new things and meet new people and realize, oh, I actually do like this, or this isn't quite what I expected it to be. And I like this a lot more. Or, again, being open to also saying, I don't like that, that's okay to not like things. But I think being open to trying those new things is going to be huge, and connecting these different pockets is people not getting too comfortable in their little bubble, but remaining curious about these other ones. And it's well, if thousands of people like those shows, there's probably something there to like. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll like it as well.
I love that. Yeah. And I think if you have a platform too, trying to share it and be open-minded about, hey, maybe I should invite this new band that maybe they don't have an audience yet, but I could give them a new opportunity here to play it at a show for me, or do a collab where, you're going to put somebody in the spotlight because you have a spotlight to put them in, and I think if people can do that more, that also helps, and that might come back around,
For sure. Yeah. And that's a huge part of what we want to do with Flavor World is promote these interconnections from these different scenes and bubbles. And I mean, for our festival, and a lot of our shows, a goal is to kind of get a group from different genres, and then also a comedian on stage and a visual artist painting over there, and just throwing these different things at them where it's maybe they came for the headliner who's a indie rock artist, but the person right before them is a hardcore band or a rapper. It's just something that they don't normally listen to. And we really, like you were saying, want to kind of use our platform to help with that interconnection and exposure to these other pockets. as well as bringing those different crowds together and getting them to mingle and meet each other is huge. So we definitely are trying to do that as much as possible with Flavor World, and hopefully, anyone with any sort of platform or event hosting or Instagram account can, chase similar things, because Flavor World, we can do as much as we can, but we can't, make all the change alone. So it's going to take a lot of people with that similar mindset to really make a big difference on the scene here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it kind of boils down to like showing up, show your support, go to things, try new things, buy local whenever you can, support the artists that are in your community, try to work together. It can be as simple as liking, subscribing, commenting, showing your support in that way, which doesn't cost you anything. But for instance, you guys could be moving towards a model at some point that if your channel got big enough and your distribution of your magazines get big enough and stuff, like your money could be coming then from advertisers, from companies that have more money versus the artists, so that you can be giving back to artists. That takes liking and subscribing.
It does.
That's what it comes down to. So that's free for people, and do that for your fellow creatives out in the community. And then I think the last thing is just that you show up and contribute. If you're an artist, get involved. Also put your art out there. Be bold. Your art might be the thing that helps build this too. Don't be afraid. You don't have to sit in the background. Like, I guess that's part of showing up too. But as an artist creating and showing up, or as just a fan showing up and supporting the people.
Yeah, those are all great points. And I mean, just to touch on it, we've talked a lot about, how we can improve as a scene. But I just want to give a little credit to how awesome the scene is here already. I mean, there's already a lot of collaboration and a lot of talented people and organizations doing great things. So I do think the Twin Cities are really onto something great. I think there's a great history here, especially with music and some visual art. A lot of talent has come out of here. And I just think it's easily available for much larger industry and creatives and money and everything for everybody if we can just kind of do some of these things that we're touching on. But no shame on the Twin Cities right now. I think it's a wonderful scene, and I only want to see it grow more.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Drew. This has been a really great conversation. I've enjoyed learning more about Flavor World. I'm a fan myself. I'm going to continue to read the magazines and hype you guys. I'll hopefully be able to point some artists in your direction that might want some of your merch services at the very least. If you also are one of those people that feels like Flavor World might be able to help you get something created out in the world, don't be shy. Reach out to them and check them out. If you have other ideas or want to keep this conversation going, let me know. By no means are we experts. We're just doing our best on like what we think can help. And I'm sure there's other people with great ideas that maybe could come to life. So don't be afraid to reach out to us or leave a comment or whatever. And maybe that'll be incorporated into the next Flavor Fest or a future episode of Secrets from the Scene. Keep the conversation going. Let's keep talking about this and find ways that we could maybe connect in new ways with new mediums or new artists.
Totally. That ties right into, contributing and getting collaboration from other people.
Yeah.
It could start as simple as something a viewer has to say that we didn't quite think of. So please, let us know. Send us a message. I'm super curious.
You mentioned it earlier, but if anybody wants to get involved with Flavor World, follow you guys, what's the best platform?
Best platform is probably our Instagram. It's at flavorworld_ is our handle, but we're also active on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. We try to do them all, but Instagram's just kind of the most frequently updated one of those. But we also got an email list I can add to you too if you send us your email. I don't know, just show up to our events and you'll learn about the next event, and hopefully we can get connected and keep it all rolling.
I'm going to put all that in the show notes. And, one thing I ask all the guests at the end of every episode is if you'd like to share a secret from your time in the scene so far, something that you think is misunderstood, something that you just want to hammer home, maybe from this conversation, or perhaps something that you feel is something that you wish you would have known earlier.
I feel like for me, Well, one, like, attempt to work with these organizations or artists that might feel out of your league. There's been a few times where I've just reached out to people I totally thought were out of my league career-wise, and they just opened it up and were super accepting to me and gave me opportunities and advice, and it was super helpful for me. So just don't be afraid to like reach out to some of these people. I feel like it's easy to put people on a pedestal, but especially here, Minnesota nice, people just kind of want to help out. And I think a lot of these people, you might not get answers from everybody, but a lot of people will just be excited to help you out and give you a bit of advice or an opportunity. So I've definitely found a bit of success and experience through doing that. So I'd recommend that to other people. Just send them a message, see what happens.
I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people do get pretty in their heads about, it was scary. It is vulnerable to, if somebody doesn't respond or whatever, but never hurts to ask. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Drew, so much for coming on and sharing your insights and telling us all about Flavor World. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, share, subscribe, all that thing, and spread the word. And hopefully both these platforms can continue to grow and help people. Maybe we can do something together down the line. That'd be fun to explore a way to work together.
Absolutely.
And practice what we preach.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time.